Today is Monday, April 6th, and this is VOA's International Edition. I'm Lori Lunden in Washington. Coming up, officials warn Americans that they should brace for the hardest, saddest week of their lives. New York's governor says there could be a glimmer of hope in what has been the COVID U.S. epicenter.
We're looking at this seriously now because by the data, we could be either very near the apex or the apex could be a plateau and we could be on that plateau right now. We won't know until you see the next few days. Does it go up? Does it go down?
Also ahead, a beloved American musician whose messages resonate now more than ever has died. It's all on today's International Edition. There are now at least 1,216,422 confirmed cases of coronavirus and more than 65,000 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University on Sunday. Also, over the weekend, the U.S. Surgeon General said Americans should brace for impending and immeasurable sorrow in the next few weeks that will likely touch untold numbers of families. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo said Sunday that the number of COVID-19 deaths in the state climbed to nearly 4,200, but that there is a glimmer of hope that the spread could be slowing.
The number of deaths over the past few days has been dropping for the first time. What is the significance of that? It's too early to tell.
As the crisis over medical supplies escalates, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, during a news conference on Saturday on CTV, responded to the Trump administration's announcement that it plans to block the export of N95 protective masks and surgical gloves. Trudeau pushed back, saying the U.S. and Canada's relationship is interdependent.
I think of the thousands of nurses, for example, who cross the bridge in Windsor to work in the Detroit medical system every single day. These are things that Americans rely on, and it would be a mistake to create blockages or reduce the amount of back and forth trade of essential goods and services, including medical goods, across our border.
Trudeau also said Canada is in discussion with the Trump administration and does not plan to bring retaliatory or punitive measures in response to Trump's announcement. In the UK, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was diagnosed with the coronavirus more than a week ago, has now been admitted to a hospital for tests. AP correspondent Ben Thomas reports.
Although I'm feeling better and I've done my 7 days of isolation, alas, I still have one of the symptoms, a minor symptom of I still have a temperature.
That was the Prime Minister on Friday. Now Downing Street says Johnson is being admitted for tests as a precautionary step because he still has symptoms 10 days after testing positive for the virus. The 55-year-old has been quarantined in his Downing Street residence since being diagnosed with COVID-19 on March 26th. But he's continued to chair daily meetings on Britain's response to the outbreak, and his office says he remains in charge of the government. The virus causes mild to moderate symptoms in most people, but for some, especially older adults and the infirm, it can cause pneumonia and lead to death. I'm Ben Thomas.
Queen Elizabeth II told the British people Sunday that they would overcome the coronavirus outbreak if they stayed resolute in the face of lockdown and self-isolation in an extremely rare broadcast to the nation.
I'm speaking to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time, a time of disruption in the life of our country, a disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes to the daily lives of us all.
It was only the fifth televised address of her 68-year reign. Queen offered a message of support, promising the nation it would rise to the challenge and overcome the outbreak. She also thanked the healthcare workers fighting to save lives.
I also want to thank those of you who are staying at home, thereby helping to protect the vulnerable and sparing many families the pain already felt by those who have lost loved ones.
The COVID-19 crisis has infected more than 47,000 people in the UK and killed close to 5,000. Pope Francis Sunday urged people to look at the real heroes as the world is dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. In his Palm Sunday Mass in an empty St. Peter's Basilica, he said the real heroes are those giving of themselves to serve others. Sabina Castelfranco has more for VOA from Rome.
Pope Francis celebrated Palm Sunday Mass behind closed doors and with no audience from the altar of the chair at the back of St. Peter's Basilica. It was the start of a Holy Week unlike any experience before at the Vatican or elsewhere in the world. Addressing the world's faithful who watched on television or on the internet, Pope Francis told them to have courage in the tragedy of the pandemic, in the face of the many false securities that have now crumbled, in the face of so many hopes betrayed, and in the sense of abandonment that weighs upon people's hearts.
Il dramma che stiamo attraversando in questo tempo ci spinge.
The Pope said that the tragedy we are experiencing summons us to take seriously the things that are serious and not to be caught up in those that matter less, to rediscover that life is of no use if not used to serve others. The Pope urged the faithful to reach out to those who are suffering and those most in need. He told them not to be concerned with what they lack, but with what good can be done for others.
Amare, pregare, perdonare, prendersi cura degli altri.
Loving, praying, forgiving, caring for others in the family and in society, all this can certainly be difficult. It can feel like a via crucis, the Pope said, referring to the way of the cross. The Pope told young people to look at the real heroes who come to light in these days. They are not famous, rich and successful people, he said. Rather, they are those who are giving themselves in order to serve others. Feel called yourselves to put your lives on the line, he said. Sabina Castelfranco for VOA News, Rome.
Here are some of the other top pandemic stories from around the world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi joined millions of Indians in switching off their lights for 9 minutes at 9 p.m. on Sunday and lighting candles, lamps, or flashlights to express resilience during the pandemic. Many clapped, burst firecrackers, rang bells, blew conch shells, and lit lamps outside their homes. The Navy captain relieved of his command of the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier earlier this week after a scathing letter was leaked to the media in which he called on the Navy to take action to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Aboard the ship has now reportedly tested positive for the coronavirus. The Navy said Saturday the number of crew on board who have tested positive for the virus has risen 13% in the past 24 hours. Airbus supplied 4 million masks to Europe Saturday after purchasing and collecting the cargo from China. The aircraft manufacturer said it will give away most of the masks to the governments of its founding countries, France, Spain, the UK, and Germany, to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. This is the third such mission Airbus has undertaken since mid-March. Stay with VOA for all the very latest.